It was the heart of December in Ghana, a time when the land prepared itself for the grand celebration of Christmas. It was a painter of faint white haze in the mornings, lips cracked easily. In the bustling home of Mr. Kofi and his wife Linda, the atmosphere was charged with the humid excitement of children. Hello, if you are just tuning into this channel, please subscribe to our channel, give this video a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to share with your friends and family. Tell us where you are watching from. Their 4 offspring, Kwadwo and Kwaku, the boisterous sons, and Ama and Adwa, the giggling daughters, were a storm of motion. They ran from the sitting room to the veranda, shouting, laughing, and dragging small, overstuffed traveling bags. For them, Christmas meant only one sacred destination: the village. The village, the ancestral home, was where time itself seemed to slow down. There, cousins waited with games, grandparents sat beneath the colossal tree in their compound, their laps ready to hold their grandkids, their voices ready with captivating stories. The entire family compound would become an open, vibrant theater for laughter. The rich smell of roasting cow, and the sharp, comforting scent of firewood smoke curling into the cool night sky. Kofi was a successful man. He was not merely wealthy by village standards, he was a big name in the city, a respected timber merchant, and the pillar in his church and family. He carried the aura of a man who had been favored by the gods, or so the villagers believed. Yet Kofi knew his true success was not in the ledger of his business, but in his unwavering faith. Every morning, long before the first defiant cock crowed, his voice would rise in the house, not as a whisper, but as a thunderous proclamation. He prayed with a passion that bordered on violence, a conviction so deep it seemed he was physically wrestling the forces of darkness. Father, preserve this home. Guide our steps from the pit. Let no darkness, visible or unseen, come near the shadow of this roof. His deep, resonant voice would echo through the corridors of his house. The children, though still heavy with sleep, would rise and kneel beside him. They rubbed their eyes, whispering a sleepy but earnest amen after each powerful declaration. Sometimes they would mimic his loud, commanding tone and his tightly folded hands, their faces breaking into small, innocent giggles as they tried to pray with the fervor of their papa. But in the midst of this fervent devotion, one key figure was always missing: Linda, his wife. She would be on the edge of the bed, her arms crossed tight over her chest, staring at her husband with an undeniable air of irritation. Sometimes she would simply roll over, burying her head beneath a pillow to muffle the sound. Other times she let out a quiet, sharp hiss of annoyance. She did not join. She refused to participate. The children, with their pure, unclouded vision, noticed. "Papa," one said Kwadwo asked innocently, pulling on Kofi's prayer shawl, "why does Mama not pray with us? Is she sick?" Kofi had managed a pained smile, patting his son's head. "Do not worry, my champion. Everyone walks their own journey to the Creator." But in the secret chamber of his heart, the matter was a source of persistent, agonizing trouble. When he was alone with Linda, his carefully constructed patience often wore thin. "Linda," he would say, his voice dropping to a low, serious tone, "a home without the shield of prayer is like a village without its defensive walls. The enemy can stroll in at any time. Your lack of spirituality is a danger to us all." But Linda, an educated and fiercely pragmatic woman, always brushed off his warnings with a disdainful wave of her hand. Kofi, must you pray every single minute, even when you are eating, even when you are bathing? Will you pray the roof right off this house? You are too spiritual. Honestly, God himself must be tired of hearing your voice. Her cruel words were like tiny poisoned arrows. They pierced him, but he was a man of discipline. He simply swallowed the pain. For years, he had endured the spiritual solitude, praying harder, clinging to the desperate hope that one day his wife would finally understand the reality of the unseen battles they faced. This particular December, as the children celebrated their pending freedom, Kofi's heart grew increasingly heavy. An unseen weight pressed on his spirit. Something dark, something chilling was lingering just beyond the edge of his perception. He prayed more fervently than ever before, his dawn sessions becoming intense, tear-filled vigils. Yet the deep uneasiness refused to lift. It was the feeling a hunter gets just before the storm breaks, a primal, terrifying intuition. The final Sunday before their planned trip arrived, and the air within the massive church hall was thick with praise. It was a glorious sound. Drums echoed a primal rhythm, tambourines rattled in frantic joy, and hundreds of voices rose in a unified chorus of worship. The congregation swayed, lost in the ecstasy of the moment. After the powerful service, Kofi and Linda and their kids followed one of the deacon toward the pastor's office. Their children waited outside the pastor's office. They played, chased each other through the church courtyard, their laughter loud. Inside the pastor's office, the atmosphere was dramatically different. The heavy silence was palpable. Pastor Menza sat behind his large desk, his eyes closed, his face etched with a profound sorrow. When he finally opened them, a cloud of deep distress filled his gaze. He placed a hand, heavy with foreboding, upon his Bible. His voice, usually strong and booming, was low and trembling. "My children," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I have been praying for your family. I have fasted until the hunger was a knife in my stomach. Yet the vision remains the same. It is a journey covered in a dreadful darkness." He paused, the silence stretching taut between the three adults. "I see blood spilled on the road. I see deep, inconsolable mourning. Kofi, Linda, I beg you, you must cancel this trip. Remain here. Remain in prayer. The Lord's hand is heavy in warning." Kofi's heart slammed against his ribs. A cold sweat broke out on his palms. He looked at his wife, her face pale, then back at the pastor. The terror was a bitter taste in his mouth. But before Kofi could gather his voice to speak, Linda leaned forward, her face a mask of anger and defiance. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the pastor's prophecy. "Pastor, with all due respect, we absolutely cannot cancel this trip. Plans have been made, money has been spent, and we travel to the village every single Christmas. If we stay back, the Christmas will not be joyful without us. Nothing will happen. We cannot live our lives being paralyzed by fear." Kofi's face burned with embarrassment. He bowed his head, his shame a lead weight. "Dottie, please forgive her disrespectful words. We have heard your warning. We shall continue to pray with all our might." Pastor Menza sighed, his eyes brimming with a profound spiritual pity. "Prayer is not merely a ritual, my children. It is a powerful conduit of obedience and an invincible protection. But God will not force your hands. Be wise. Heed the messenger." As they left, the children sprinted toward them, tugging eagerly at their parents' hands. But in the air-conditioned silence of their comfortable car, the atmosphere was thick and suffocating with unspoken words. Finally, Kofi could no longer bear it. "Linda, perhaps we should listen to the man of God. Perhaps we should postpone the trip until—" "Postpone? Because of one man's nightmare? Kofi, you are blind. The pastor only wants us here because of the Christmas programs. He counts on your hefty offerings. That is what this is truly about. Money, not visions." Kofi's throat closed. His hands tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles shone white. He said nothing, though his spirit screamed 1,000 desperate pleas. Even their children, seated quietly in the back, noticed the sudden, terrifying tension between their parents. "Papa?" one of the girls asked softly. "Why are you and Mummy shouting?" Kofi faked a smile and said they were just talking. But inside, his trembling heart, he was fed up with his wife's pride and disrespectful attitude. But he was only managing her. Far away, in the quiet, dusty heart of the village, a different kind of darkness was brewing. One man could not find rest. This man was Kwaku, the younger brother of Kofi's father, making him Kofi's uncle. Every year, his nephew's grand return was a public event, a festival of shame for Kwaku. Kofi arrived with cars that gleamed like polished glass, bursting with generous gifts and wads of crisp currency. The villagers sang Kofi's name in their songs. Elders paid courtesy calls to his house. Chiefs and even the king dined lavishly at his table. Children ran after him, their small voices calling out the title of respect. "Big Fish!" And Kwaku? He was merely Kwaku. He was ignored, forgotten like the dry, withered leaves the Harmattan wind swept carelessly away. His own 6 children in the city struggled daily. They often had to beg Kofi for financial help, and Kofi always gave. But to Kwaku, every single coin felt like salt rubbed directly into an open wound. "Why must I bow to him?" Kwaku muttered into the suffocating darkness of his hut, lying on his thin raffia mat. "Why must my children kneel and beg their own cousin? Why do the villagers sing his praises and not mine? Am I a slave in my own village? Am I nothing?" Jealousy, a corrosive and poisonous agent, burned hotter than any fire in his chest. His bitterness grew like aggressive weedery and consumed his soul. Finally, unable to bear the agony of his envy, he arose. Under the cover of the night, he walked a long, secret path toward the forbidden edge of the forest, toward the dwelling of Ozu, the feared and dreaded priest of the dark arts. The air around the shrine was heavy, smelling strongly of acrid smoke, charred herbs, and dried animal blood. Skulls of various creatures lined the floor like grim ornaments. A large, ancient, and badly cracked mirror leaned ominously against a wall, reflecting distorted shadows. Ozu sat cross-legged, his skin glistening with oil, his eyes glowing with an unnatural, predatory light in the dimness of the burning herbs. His voice, when it came, slithered like a snake moving through dry grass. "You are jealous of your nephew, Kofi." Kwaku's lips tightened, confirming the obvious. "Yes, he comes here only to oppress me with his immense wealth. He makes me small, a tiny insect in the eyes of my own people. I want him silenced. I want him to be nothing." Ozu let out a soundless, chilling chuckle. "Bring me an item of his clothing, something he has worn, and I will show you the swift and final end of his journey." Kwaku did not hesitate for a moment. Days later, under the pretense of fetching water,
He sneaked into Kofi's city compound and managed to steal a favorite white shirt from the laundry line. Returning to the stench-filled shrine, he thrust the garment into Ozu's waiting hands. The priest began his ritual. He lit candles made of human fat, sprinkled a thick, dark liquid that Kwaku instinctively knew was blood, and placed the stolen shirt reverently before the ancient, cracked mirror. His voice rose in deep, guttural incantations, a language of the dark earth and hungry spirits. Thick smoke filled the chamber, making the air almost unbreathable. The surface of the mirror flickered violently, then settled into a swirling black image. Then, Ozu's laughter erupted, a sound of pure, unadulterated evil. I see it. I see the outcome. 6 caskets. Your nephew and his entire family will not complete their journey. They will perish on the road. Their blood will water the thirsty earth, and their bodies will become food for the land. Kwaku's lips curved into a triumphant smile. His heart, now entirely given over to evil, leapt with vicious joy. That night, as he lay on his familiar mat, he laughed silently. A soundless victory. He could already picture the scene. Himself, the deeply grieved uncle, being consoled by weeping villagers, the family utterly broken. His soul rejoiced in the act of premeditated evil. Morning arrived, and the compound of Kofi was a riot of noise and joyous chaos. The children shouted with excitement, their small, eager feet barely touching the ground as they dragged their bags in their car. Neighbors gathered by the gate, waving, "Safe journey," they cried out. "Bring us good news." Linda, basking in the attention, boasted loudly to a close neighbor, "This year we shall paint the village red. We are Christmas." But Kofi's spirit was far from settled. He gathered his family in the sitting room, his face stern. "Before we embark on this journey," he declared, "we must kneel and pray one last time." Linda threw her hands up in exasperation. "Again, Kofi? We are late already. The morning traffic will be awful." "It is wrong," Kofi said, his voice firm and unwavering, "to challenge the head of this home in front of our children." She hissed, a sound of utter disgust. "Kofi, if you simply do not want us to travel, just say it. You pray when eating, when bathing, even when sleeping. Are you the only holy man in all of Ghana?" She stomped out of the house and straight to the car. Kofi ignored her dramatic exit. He knelt with his children. Their small, determined voices rose with his, joining in a final, desperate symphony of faith. "Father, guide our path. Send your angels to surround us. Erect an invisible barrier against all evil lurking on this road." As they drove, Kofi's hands trembled on the steering wheel. Sweat trickled down his face, even with the air conditioner blowing a steady stream of cool air. Linda, sensing his fear, mocked him softly from the passenger seat. "Look at you! So after all those prayers, you are still shaking like a baby. Be a man, Kofi!" she laughed. He said nothing. He only prayed in silence, his heart troubled. Midway through the long journey, he pulled the vehicle to the roadside abruptly. "Pull over, children," he announced. "We must pray again." Linda snapped awake from a light doze. "Kofi, are you turning this trip into a church crusade?" He paid her no attention. Bowing his head until his chin touched his chest, he prayed the most desperate prayer of his life. "Lord, send your host of angels before us. Let them clear the way, let them halt, blind, and scatter any evil force set to intercept our vehicle on this road." The children chorused, a powerful, unified amen. Moments later, it happened. The road ahead was a blur of dust in the pale harmattan light. Then from nowhere, a massive fuel tanker, a roaring beast of metal, appeared in their lane. It was speeding, recklessly overtaking a column of other vehicles, hurtling straight towards them. Kofi's heart seized in his chest. The terror was absolute. He pressed the horn, his hand shaking violently, and swerved his car desperately toward the ditch. But as he pressed the pedal, the brakes failed entirely. There was a deafening, terrifying crash. Glass shattered into a million exploding fragments. Metal screamed a sound of unimaginable agony and finality. Darkness, thick, sudden, and complete, swallowed everything. In the village, the news spread like wildfire. Kofi and his entire family have perished in a horrific accident, the cry went up. His aged parents rolled on the ground of their compound in an explosion of grief. The village drums, usually so vibrant and alive, fell silent. The Christmas festival, before it could even begin, died in immediate death. Villagers wailed, their voices ringing with sorrow. The big fish has fallen. The giver has gone. Tragedy has swallowed his house. Kwaku, the architect of this misfortune, rushed to the family house, wailing louder and more hysterically than everyone else. He grabbed a kitchen knife, threatening dramatically to stab himself in a show of inconsolable grief. People rushed to hold him back. They wept with him, believing his sorrow to be genuine. But inside, behind the mask of his grief, his heart danced a wicked jig of victory. He saw the 6 caskets vividly in his mind and smiled a secret, evil smile of victory. At the crash site, which was now a scene of utter destruction, a crowd of confused and grieving villagers and emergency personnel had gathered. Smoke rose lazily from the mangled wreckage of Kofi's vehicle. But when the rescuers managed to finally pull the family from the crumpled mass of metal, a collective stunned gasp filled the dusty air. Mr. Kofi? Alive! He was bruised, his clothes torn, but he was moving. The 4 children, alive, shaken, terrified, but miraculously unhurt. Linda, alive! She was injured, her arm dislocated, her head bleeding from a laceration, but she was breathing. "They are alive!" a policeman shouted, his voice ringing with disbelief. "This is nothing short of a miracle. This is God's unmistakable hand at work." On the dusty roadside, Kofi, disregarding his own pain, fell to his knees with his children clustering around him. Tears of raw, profound relief poured down his face. "Lord, thank you. Thank you for life." At the district hospital, Linda lay in a white bed, groaning softly as nurses gently tended to her wounds and set her arm. The children sat quietly by her side, holding her uninjured hand, their faces pale with shock. Kofi knelt quietly beside the bed, his voice a low, steady murmur of thanksgiving and absolute praise. Soon after, Pastor Mensah arrived with a delegation of solemn-faced church members. His expression was serious, his eyes conveying a mix of sorrow and vindication. "Kofi, now you see the weight of my warning. You must always obey the messenger of the Most High. Your prayers preserved your family." He then turned his gaze to Linda, who flinched beneath the intensity of his stare. "Linda, you mocked your husband's commitment to prayer. You called it a ridiculous obsession. But if not for those very prayers you scorned, you would be resting in one of those 6 caskets today. The enemy's trap was perfectly set." Tears, hot and heavy with regret, streamed down Linda's bruised cheeks. She clenched her husband's hand with desperate strength. "Forgive me, Kofi. Please forgive me. I was spiritually blind. I was arrogant, thinking only of money and convenience. But your prayers, my love, your prayers saved all of us." The pastor bowed his head, allowing the moment to sink deep into her soul. "The Lord also revealed to me," he continued, his voice low, "that your own uncle sought your downfall through a very powerful evil priest. But no power, no wicked charm, no enchantment of the night is greater than the invincible power of God." Linda wept bitterly, the sorrow finally breaking her spirit of stubborn pride. For the first time in her life, her arrogant heart bowed in total submission. When Linda was well enough to leave the hospital, the entire family returned to church. This time, it was Linda who led the service of thanksgiving. Her voice was broken, her words heavy with the emotional weight of her near-death experience. She publicly confessed her skepticism and her mockery of her husband's faith. From that day forward, Linda was transformed. She became a devoted, zealous worker in the church, never missing a prayer meeting or a dawn devotion. At the break of every new day, it was she who woke the children, and she who led them in powerful corporate prayer. Kofi would watch her with a quiet pride and a profound gratitude. The woman who once mocked prayer was now its loudest, most passionate voice. As for Kwaku, the consequences of his treachery were swift and devastating. The very dark spirits he had invoked to harm his nephew turned savagely upon him. He lost all sleep, tormented by chilling voices that whispered relentlessly in the dark of his hut. He began speaking to empty shadows, chasing imaginary people in the dusty village square, and muttering utter incoherence. Madness, swift and total, consumed him entirely within a few short months. Villagers whispered the terrifying truth. The gods have judged him. His evil has eaten him alive. 2 years later, Mr. Kofi returned to the village, not just with gifts, but with a gospel crusade. Under the wide, star-dusted sky, hundreds of villagers gathered. Songs of powerful worship rose, echoing through the distant hills. Kofi stood before them, his voice firm, yet gentle. Not everyone who smiles at you is truly happy for you. Envy is a silent killer, but hear this: forgiveness is always greater than revenge. He looked toward the path where Kwaku used to roam. My uncle wronged me and sought my life, but I hold no grudge, no bitterness, only prayer. The people wept, moved by the immense power of his grace. That night the village felt a new cleansing power, not of dark idols or bloody rituals, but of the living, unbreakable shield of faith and prayer. And so the tale of Mr. Kofi and his family stands forever as a solemn, powerful reminder that prayer is an invisible yet absolute shield against all unseen battles, and jealousy is a poison whose first victim is always the heart that carries it. Stay tuned for more interesting stories on this channel.